Welcome back to the channel. Mopar Man here. Today we're working on the truck again and the installation of the famous Dodge Thermoquad. Now I also know they're called the Thermal Bog for people that don't know how to work on them and don't know how to tune them. So anyway, let me show you what I got. So I've completely rebuilt this smog era Thermoquad for I've got two 360 small block Thermoquads, and the way you can tell for your newbies, when you look at the bottom of the carburetor and you got the throttle plates for the two barrel, which is the front two ports, if it measures on the inside of the diameter 1 3/8, that's for a small block. If it measures like 1 1/2, those are for the big blocks. Anyway, this is considered 800 or 850. The 1000 CFM Thermoquads actually don't run at 1000 CFM. They run around 919 according to a guy on a dyno. But anyway, what's cool about the Quadrajets and the Thermoquads is these first two, these primaries up front, the two barrel. When you're running on an Edelbrock, no matter how well you fine tune it, or a Holly, you're getting a minimum of 400 CFM going through the front two barrels, which is not great on gas mileage. And with the Quadrajets and mainly the Thermoquads, you run around close to 200 CFM, so you're getting really good gas mileage on the two barrel. And then when you want the power of the four barrel, you got those gigantic secondaries in the back, which kicks it up to 800 or 850 CFM. Well, anyway, that's all rebuilt. And you remember in the last video, I did the 1-inch open plenum spread bore adapter plate, where it's the square bore on the top and the spread bore on the bottom, and I flipped it over and I ran, when I got a rebuild kit, it came with a 3/8 thick insulator gasket. I put that on there too, and I put a gasket, so I already had the base gasket, and then I put another custom cutout gasket. I used a 4-barrel or 4-hole a 4-barrel 4-hole gasket. I bought 2 of them and then traced the adapter, or this insulator plate here out, and I just cut out the deals to match the ports for the throat of the intake there. So now it's all bolted up. These this mounting studs here for the air gap were the ones that came with the Edelbrock adapter kit. They were like, well, 1-inch Allen head bolts. Those are already bolted down, and then before I bolted them down, you have to put these 2.5-inch 5/16 bolts upside down and through, and mount those on there, and then use the Allen head studs and bolt that plate down. So I went a little bit extra longer in case I needed to mount a bracket off of here, because I'm still going to run a manual choke. So I'm going to buy the manual choke kit from O'Reilly's that you can, the kit's called Do It Right, Do It Yourself, or by Dorman. And then what I'll do is I'll just make a homemade bracket if I got to weld a little bracket up to mount it on here. So this existing choke cable right here can be mounted up here. Well, I'll figure out something, even if I have to bring out a piece of flat little strip bracket here and run it back and bring one out and then mount a little existing plate up or something. Anyway, long story short, I'm also going to get rid of that fuel line that originally came on this Thermoquad. It's just cattywampus all over the place, all kinds of bends. It's excess, don't need it. I'll custom bend my own. The other There's a big debate on some of the YouTube channels. Do you run timed port or do you run full vacuum port for your vacuum advance? A lot of them all say to run full vacuum. The time port is for emissions. If you're doing a little bit of racing, you're going to want to do full vacuum because you get a little bit better throttle response off the line if you do full vacuum. Let's see what else. The only, well, not really a mod that I had to do was, I don't know if you can see it because the light's shining down. This is a original 60s or 70s 4-barrel, 2-barrel or 4-barrel. Yeah, I think it's a 4-barrel bracket, kickdown / throttle bracket. All I had to do is on this air gap is run 3 or 4 washers under each part of the bracket to lift it up away from the intake a little bit, and then run my bolts. Same thing like I did. Let's see if I can focus. There we go. Like I did there with the return spring bracket. And then all you do is you take a big heavy duty crescent wrench with all this stuff out of the way. And if you need to line up the geometry of the kickdown, linkage and all, bracket and all that stuff, you just bend it over a little bit to line it up. The only thing I had to do on this was this tube here was unscrew this bolt and slide it up just a little bit, so I had just enough where it would slide on the original Mopar throttle bracket here, rod, whatever you want to call it. So that's all done up. Another thing, I don't use for the newbies, I don't run the factory PCV valve. I run a Chevy one for, I think it's like a LS or something like that. It has just that hole in there. It's hollow, but it flows the same amount of vacuum as the Mopar one, but you don't have to worry about it getting clogged up, and you don't have to hear that annoying buzzing or rattling sound as it operates anymore. So I did that. I did have a slight snag. I had to go back in and recheck the float level. They said these brass floats that are in here, I got rid of the neoprene floats and put the brass floats in. They said to measure it exactly 1 inch from the top of this gasket surface when you have this lid upside down and the floats are sitting there to the top of the float, which should be 1 inch. I did just slightly, oh gosh, maybe 1/8 of an inch shorter than that. Anyway, checked all this stuff out for any leaks and made sure I tightened everything down. So everything is good to go. I did all the proper adjustments internally. If you're into these Thermoquads or want to thinking about doing it, go to on Facebook. There's a guy, last name, I can't remember his first name, but last name is Manley. He has a group for Thermoquads and Thermoquad related stuff only on Facebook, and we've got all kinds of tips and tricks to do for stock rebuilds to modified Thermoquads. He is the master when it comes to rebuilding and modifying the Thermoquads, and there's a lot of good tech tips like using the clear ink tube out of a Bic pen after you clean it out to connect the one little port nipple to the other port nipple that helps transfer gasoline to the accelerator over here, the squirter, and it's made out of polypropylene, so it resists fuels. And one guy did it, and it's been on his car for 4 years with no problem. The only thing you have to do is set it in warm, like hot water to soften the plastic up, and while it's still hot, slide the two ends on the two ports before it cools down and hardens back up, and then once it's on there, it's good. It won't leak. So I did that. So I primed the carburetor, so let's go ahead and, of course, and keep in mind, the kickdown linkage, the throttle cable, and the fuel air mixture screws, and the idle all still has to be fine-tuned, but this is just a basic run test. And I'll see if I set up the air door correctly, the tension on the air door on the back, the secondaries, and when I floor it manually by hand, I should hear it go boop with no cutouts or hesitations or backfires or anything like that. So. And there we be. Like I said, I have to adjust the RPM and all that stuff. And make sure when you use plug-off caps, make sure you get the vinyl ones, not the rubber ones. The vinyl lasts quite a long time, even if they get hot and old. Alright, so it's running. It's already been fully warmed up. So far, so good. Now I'll have to adjust that a little bit, but it got stuck there for a minute. Pop this back off. There we go. Would you like that? That's what I'm talking about. Thermoquad.